Good day. We're going to talk about attachment theory today throughout the life course. Now, attachment theory does not stand alone. The theory of attachment by D.C. and Ryan is also exemplified in Piaget's childhood development theory. Our learner objectives is to understand the attachment system and its evolutionary significance, which is viewed as lesser biology and more bio-social psychological in today's era of science. The commonly studied attachment patterns we'll be discussing. Secure, which breaks down into anxious and avoidant. Secure, which is the ideal. Insecure, which breaks down into anxious and avoidant. And disorganized, which tends towards mental disassociation or deviation. So what I want you to do here is just take a minute and think about a close personal relationship. Spend a few minutes writing some notes about that relationship and that close personal relationship. How did it feel? And how would you describe it? Attachment theory, though, has a history and core concepts. Individual differences in attachment patterns exist even in infancy. So an infant would have a different attachment pattern with one parent, with its primary caregiver, than another infant because of social circumstances. Think about the infant that goes into childcare at 6 weeks, differentiated by the child that spends time with their primary caregiver or a social group for their first 4 years. Their outcomes in childhood are going to be different. Not specific to that event, but everyone's outcomes in childhood are going to be different depending upon the attachment style and the attachment patterns of their primary caregiver. And those attachment patterns will migrate to adulthood and exemplify themselves in further circles of relationship between one and many, one and others, many, groups, and other groups. So attachment theory is Bowlby and Ainsworth's theory that attachment is the core construct that Maslow talked about in achieving safety, security, and comfort. The level of safety, security, comfort that we achieve in the Maslow pyramid during early childhood dictates the strength of our attachment patterns in successive life events and circles. Generally, it's related to a single attachment figure in early childhood. Although Durkheim, in his study of social integration theory, found that the Iroquois Indians were successful at having groups which took care of infants, and that the attachment would generalize from the mother after birth to a caregiver group. And as such, that attachment figure may be one, but might be a group, which implies that even though we don't have great attachment results that we can measure from our child care system, meaning daycares, it is possible, and it did happen in Iroquois Indian tribes. Related to behaviors, though, it's not related to solely who the figure is. Western societies, many times it's the mother, but with economics, the mother sometimes has to work one too many jobs, and as such, attachment could be with others. The attachment behavior is what drives the behavior system and the values of the individual as they develop. The attachment behavior drives the behavior system. The importance of contact and comfort cannot be overemphasized. In Harlow's research, why do infants bond with the mother? Well, it does start with physical contact. And physical contact, the level of physical contact, does migrate into other aspects of human existence over the lifespan. There are very many individual differences in infant attachment patterns. And those attachment patterns are related back to the attachment system that was in place, which drives the attachment behavior. Now, Ainsworth in her study talked about the strange situation in which she attaches, where she assesses attachment styles based upon different behavioral systems, attachment behavioral systems, which drive different attachment behaviors. And she came up with secure, avoidant, and anxious as the three styles. We also have disorganized, but we consider narcissism and all other personality disorders as falling into disorganized personalities, which are considered as psychologically deviant from and probably requiring treatment. So for today's purposes, we're going to talk about attachment from a secure ideal, and then what generally happens, either avoidant and anxious. And these attachment styles are associated with the caregiver's primary response. A responsive caregiver provides a secure attachment. An unresponsive caregiver provides an avoidant. Inconsistent caregiver or reactionary caregiver makes the child anxious and resistant and creates an anxious personality attachment. These personality attachments are not necessarily known to change throughout childhood and throughout life. A person's attachment pattern is something they would need to benefit from if it's secure and cope with if it's avoidant and anxious. So it's important for parents to evaluate their attachment pattern. And what type of attachment bond do you form, did you form with your parents, is likely to be what you will form with your children. And if a conscious effort to break that fixed pattern and go into a growth pattern of deeper attachment is valuable, it could have a significant benefit on the next generation. So what kind of experiences lead to attachment style? Well, let's have a discussion at this stage of what type of experiences you feel could lead to the goal of an attached, secure relationship. We'll pause at this point in order to have a Socratic discussion or a discussion board, if this is an online class, in the idea of evaluating one's own attachment style and what kinds of things could be integrated in order to achieve a deeper, attached, secure relationship with the next generation. Okay, moving on to the next topic, which is outcomes in childhood. Childhood outcomes are directly related to attachments and experiences and how those understandings develop from the experiences and the attachments one had. Secure children are likely to have better relationships with all others, including peers. They will do better in school. They persist through challenging tasks because they feel secure and safe, that there's no risks and or limited risks or if there are risks, that those challenging tasks may produce greater value than whatever the risk associated with achieving that task. Insecure or avoidant are likely to be classified as bullies. To deflect from the pain of fight, flight, or freeze that it comes from an experience, an avoidant will typically avoid the problem at hand and deflect through negative ways to disrupt the experience of others. They may have difficulty making friends and maintaining friendship because of the nature of their bullying. These attachments in adulthood come from specifically these attachment patterns. So romantic love as a secure will relatively easy to get close to others, be comfortable depending upon them and having them depend upon themselves. Not worried about being abandoned, and also good boundaries associated with what are my needs, who am I as an individual, and how do I circle myself with people in which I would rate their relationship higher than lower. And if my relationships are lower, how do I supplement those with higher level of relationships? An avoidant, someone that is less secure and was what we call abandoned in childhood, left on their own when they were not capable of handling being left on their own, will find it difficult to trust others. They'll feel anxious and nervous with others and often seek intimate relationships to comfort that. Seems counterintuitive. Without trust, why would you seek intimate relationships? But that is not the construct in effect. They would seek intimate relationships in order to quell the pain of feeling alone and unattached. An anxious will find that others are reluctant to get close as they would like. They're always anxious, and they always feel as if there is risk in the relationship, and they do not present the level of consistency necessary to attract other people who are not anxious as well. So the problem becomes that we will attract throughout our life people of similar attachment style. And it's not great to match up avoidant personalities with avoidant personalities, anxious attachments with anxious attachments, because those codependencies are not going to produce safety, security, and comfort. So again, absent of growth mindset, we're going to be in fixed patterns of attachment, and those fixed patterns of attachment will result in inability to grow existentially, achieve goals, and attain meaning. So romantic relationships are attachments. Even though we've talked about all relationships should be attachments, we tend towards the attraction, the lust, as being our primary gravitation towards relationships. This somewhat tells us that many of us are avoidant and anxious, and as such, we're seeking to quell the pain and discomfort that we feel from our avoidance and anxiousness in order to feel safety, security, and comfort. The problem is that those relationships may be not founded in the constructs which would build strength from a relationship of high efficacy. The purpose of attachment and dating, as we talked about in the prior exercise on relationships, is to sort out romantic relationships and understand if that one-to-one relationship is got possibilities associated with being supportive, encouraging, and validating. The tendency to have a partner of similar style is the fixed pattern, again, passed down sociologically, ethnicity, group, religion, familial standards, and may or may not necessarily lead to the greatest level of actualization on the Maslow pyramid. But a person who is insecure is not going to feel the level of safety, security, and comfort in order to be able to rise up the pyramid to the self-determination arena, and hence will be constantly focused on patching and repatching their attachment profile at the safety, security, and comfort level. Of course, secure partners are attractive. Secure partners also tend towards being attracted to other secure partners because they understand the value of security in their attachment patterns and attachment style and to their lives. And the effect of influence of others, other groups, group to group, which are also securely attached, gives a giant advantage to those that come out of childhood with secure attachment profiles. Because of our struggles in our society, and one might say that 10 to 12% and are leaving childhood with secure attachments. Higher security, more satisfying relationships and less conflict. More enduring relationships, greater level of success in life due to the ability to transcend the Maslow pyramid, feel safety, security, and comfort, and function at high-level ways and self-determination, which provides actualization. So again, a discussion, time for a Socratic seminar on how would we see ourselves, and how in seeing ourselves in a certain way, what experiences led one to these attachment styles, and those attachment styles, what do they lead us to in life experience? In just living with reality, how do we understand who we are from an id perspective, how it developed, and how do we supplement that in order to be effectively actualizing on the Maslow pyramid? Okay, great discussion. So what is the probability that our relationship is going to produce existential actualization for us in our life? Early childhood attachment is a probabilistic, most related correlation to this. The influence of attachments beyond romantic relationships as well, because the breakdown of romantic relationships into lust and attraction, and also to quell the insecurity and lack of safety and comfort in anxious and avoidant relationships, leads us to a high probability that not only are we not going to match up effectively from a romantic perspective, that it takes a definite amount of work and effort for that to occur. Dr. Jordan Peterson, a premier psychologist living today, says that a romantic relationship needs at least 2 years in order for the ego to be transcended and understand what the id is in the other person.